Welcome to 221B Baker Street by way of the Southgate Bridge. I am your host, of course, Zachary here, Sherlock Holmes aficionado, Sherlockian, whatever you want to call me, and with me, as always, is everyone's favorite, regular Karen Vera.
Hi, Zach. I would be ready never to see another skinless chicken photo ever again.
Indeed. This one actually is the second episode was a sort of actually technically the third when you think about it, with a reference to Hound of the Baskervilles.
Yeah.
First one was the Hound that would snuff out cancer. The second one was actually, they used it, I believe it was Stapleton. Is the name Moriarty gave when she was pretending to be Irene kidnapped. So this would be the third reference, which is, and it's definitely obviously because we actually have Baskervilles in this one.
Yes. I understand from the elementary writing team that they were so waiting for their own chance to do a Hounds of the Baskervilles adaptation. And here it is. It's a more direct connection to that story.
Yes, indeed. I've seen several adaptations. It was definitely an interesting take. And Hounds, I think Hounds is a lot of people's favorite.
The one with the cancer dog?
No, I mean the original Hounds of the Baskervilles, from the original canon.
Yes. That's why it brings with it a lot of association, first contact with Sherlock Holmes, and I was interested to hear your more expert take on this because I've never read that story. I only know it from the previous Sherlock episode, from all the way back from season 2. So your perspective will be very interesting to discuss today.
Well, they definitely took aspects of it. It wasn't a direct adaptation. It was modified a bit to make their own story. Now, I knew from the second I saw the attack that whatever it was going to be robotic. I could hear it in the growl.
Really? Because you think that's the only a better modern way to bring out a sort of a alternative kind of villain? Is that why you thought it's going to be robotic? I mean, what makes it?
Oh, I mean, I could literally hear it in the growl.
It didn't feel like a real animal, the growl.
I did. I could hear it. Sounded mechanical to like some of the sound. I wasn't that surprised. The other thing that happens is we get, which is probably my favorite aspect of this episode, is the storyline with Hawes. It seems he's losing his touch, but he accidentally contaminated some evidence. And actually, this is something I didn't mention last week because it didn't feel relevant to the story. But I've seen this. I think it was a big surprise with these writers put there intentionally. If you remember last week, missed that. The man that the old woman landed on had a tooth on him from the old woman.
Yes, that as well.
And Hawes had missed that.
So they laid the groundwork very subtly in the previous episode to lead this full plot about what the outcome of Hawes and his recent events in his life. So and I agree, that's the best part of this episode.
Yes, so they are called in because apparently Sherlock's father was friends with the senior Baskerville, and I love that the father just tore down a bunch of stuff to build it up, and Sherlock's like, no wonder they were friends.
Yeah, and this is the guy is played by Everett Scott, who seems like a giant compared to Johnny Mirror. Is it the blocking or he's really that tall? I don't know what it is, but he's probably very tall and reactionary, guys.
Now we also see while they're investigating the scene that Sherlock tries what likely happened. There swears up and down to and knew there's no way he would just run going down an embankment. Deduces that there was a witness, most likely because of the list.
That explains what a blind panic is an actual thing. And we can add that to another interesting collection of knowledge Sherlock just generously shared us to Watson and to us, the audience. And so they trace it to this witness who Sherlock abandons Watson to interview, and we get one of Watson's by this point very well timed, well delivered. Where are you going? First Thursday of the month, so he's off to see Hawes. But those comedic beats, by 4 years of the show, it's still funny, and I think it's well earned because we feel Watson's exasperation as much as from Sherlock's abrupt kind of behavior from him.
Yes, and with that, Joan finds the homeless man, and obviously her skills as a doctor and as a soul companion come to play her, where she gets him to tell her what he saw, and he tells her with some kind of glowing.
So this uh, brings like glowing animal. Sherlock also was saying, he noticed, was it here where it's, it had four legs, or it was notably sure.
Well, he was short and wide, and they had a unique string,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
So while Watson is getting, putting on her old sober companion, I think Sherlock goes to see Hawes for their chess session. It's hard to say, chess session.
Yes, and actually, through the chess session, he uses that to try to tell Hawes, obviously you're off your game. I mean, you give me a better game than this. You are. And he's like, I just got things on my mind. But Sherlock says, no, it's more than that. But Hawes kind of deflects it.
And he, I like that how Sherlock says, this game had X moves, and X moves, and wow, this guy, I guess chess is a game of counting moves, right? And so Sherlock knows too well how to play it out. And I guess it was like maybe 3 episodes ago where he established that Hawes had this big trauma in his life, right? His potential date sort of exploded right in front of him. He almost died. So, and it was in his own workplace, which I think is a big factor. A place where you normally think would cure and no harm would come to you, and it all happened in that location. I'm sure, any guy, no matter how he's in his job, would still feel the after effects of that kind of trauma.
Yes. There we go, Brownstone, and Joan is telling Sherlock what the homeless man told Sherlock, listening.
Yes.
And I like how he's like saying like the man might have thought he saw something. I like how he says pretty much says an altered state of an altered one. No, he said maybe he was in an altered state or two.
and even why are you taking seriously? Is also funnily handled. So off to finding out now, what kind of creature has attacked Baskerville, Charles Baskerville.
So they find out that they found out he's been getting threats actually involved with genetic research, and I want an adorable, I wanted to pet that dog, he was so cute. Yeah. And,
who pastors isn't Potato, he's a real dog with jellyfish DNA.
And it was such a red herring when they made him.
Yeah, right away, too soon, part of too soon for him for us to reach, an investigation. So yes, it's a red herring, but still, it was intriguing because, I wonder if, such kind of genetic blending is possible these days. I guess the answer is yes.
I'm sure there is. I don't know if there's glowing dogs, and I wonder if the genetic testing lab is a jab at DBC Sherlock.
Well, why do you think that?
Well, because that was Denver Hound.
Oh my God! You know what? I've forgotten totally the details of that episode. I only remember the ending where, Sherlock is trying to check Mark Freeman Watson. Yeah, so I don't need those anymore.
Yeah. So because the man who threatened Baskerville also threatened they're actually able to track the man down, and obviously, even though he is a big man, it's obvious to see that he wouldn't be chasing anybody. So he had an alibi for that night.
He got, was the center of attention. So that's exciting.
Now he tells them about some of the weird create there, and this I could get in the whole genetically modified argument.
This is where you see the picture of that chicken that like. Ugh. So yeah. I'm glad it was brief, but we do see an important clue, a photo of a yes,
war dog.
So war dog.
Now the thing about it's like Sherlock, and especially Sherlock, neither one of them said for a second, "Oh, this is obviously a fake picture."
Yeah, I guess they took it at face value. So,
which I thought I was a little weird about that because it clearly was a fake picture.
Maybe yes. So maybe for purposes of with this gloss over, or maybe Sherlock needs more. He needs to add into his training photoshopped, digitally altered images. So, yes. So this is a new gap in the story that not moving.
So they talk to the man cat war dogs. Turns out they've tried, never come to fruition. So there's not anything that could have done to chase and kill Henry.
Yes.
Oh, wait, Henry was the one that killed Charles? Yeah. Again, I'm getting my Baskervilles mixed up. But
yeah.
So he actually gives him a good tidbit, which eventually, of course, leads to an important aspect of the case that Charles had a really nasty little habit of essentially stealing, kind of legally, but stealing patents from people, screwing over inventors, and making money off.
And it's an American tradition. Thomas Edison did it himself, according to Sherlock.
Yeah. Well, and it's true. Thomas, I think, like, it's one of those things as a kid, you're Thomas Edison gave us the light bulb, and realized Thomas Edison was an
And
ass. He was I don't consider him an inventor. He was a
you
businessman.
know what? It's a story for our times because there's people to this day who claim to do things, but really was just hustering.
Oh, yeah.
Take what you will, depends on what that means.
But one of the last living Baskerville gives him a call. Even though it was a simple effect, I like how they make us think again it's the dog, and you just see the bow as it's walking.
Yes. Yeah, and yeah, this is a time where it makes a lot of noise, and I guess you're right. It sounds mechanical. You know, the second time we're exposed to the sound of the robot dog.
It was kind of intense when I was trying to break down
Yeah,
the door.
it's a killer, robot. Gosh. And
Because that's when we find out it's obviously physical.
yes.
We didn't know what it was yet. We do find out in a few
Correct.
minutes.
I mean, it's a stage at the start, like it was kind of mystical and, kind of supernatural. And so, while you're thinking about that and contemplating that, it's actually a real thing because we're taking in the call, Henry Baskerville, the one who looks like, well, that can be right now. And I guess Sherlock knows, the layout of the grounds when he visited Henry earlier episode and knew where to take this attacking canine and how to resolve getting away from it.
So sure, with his help, he's able to escape, and this is when we find out it's actually a robot.
And it's made parts of different things that
which we find out later is very real. Because I remember thinking at the time, who would be so stupid to like an obvious motive,
Well,
but we found out there's a reason. There's a reason for that. It's essentially a Frankenstein of parts from different stuff.
Yes, and it's the work of another company that has a series of these things. They call them Gus machines, and this one was particularly missing. They trace it to who built Gus, and it turns out to be this other IT high tech guru kind of guy named Roger Stapleton, and this is the Baskerville references in them before, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. And unlike in the original story where things were changed, but he says right at the start, "I am a Baskerville." He's actually his cousin, so he has motive to kill him. But he tells him he has an alibi. But then we find out his alibi is nothing because he was in the city. He's got a little thing for the ladies.
So he claimed alibis. I go on a grouse hunt in Montana or Idaho or something. Of course, like he said, he never leaves the city, and he goes hunting for a different kind of creatures to keep him company. And the reason they find out this alibi is fake is, of course, Sherlock's knowledge of, again, tobacco, right? Because he knows that certain smell, and he can trace which guy is gonna spill the beans for them. So it's another Conan Doyle reference on Sherlock's.
Oh yeah, that's tobacco
knowledge.
Classic.
Ashes and scents, he knows both. Okay.
And tattoos.
So now that we know that Stapleton's motive is probably not true, they have to go back to Stapleton, right? And find out, we find a connection to you. How can you need to prove that, how are you not in this crime? And he offers a very unique way to say, here, if you want to find out an innocent, get me to punch the officer, which because it would be a felony and he would not be able to, which is getting ahead a bit of a story, because the reason why there's the Baskerville fortune goes to the most rare, but if the direct heir has a criminal record, he can't inherit it. So it's how also get
right. Yeah, that was a great moment. Like, I'll punch him. His lawyer's like, obviously your client says I'm going to call. No. He's like,
So then they're back to finding out how else to put the dots. Brock and Jonah are sort of sorting out that.
Now in the middle of this, we get more of the horror, and I love this scene. Is amazing.
Oh God, this is like acting beautifully done. I mean, his face, his voice. Johnny Lee Miller really excels in this kind of dramatic scenes, and with Hawes, who we know from many episodes. So it's really the meaning is expanded and deepened for us because this is an important conversation. And he references Moriarty / Irene Adler again in this conversation, which makes me think this is like the 15th time they mentioned her this season. So maybe she'll be appearing sooner than we think. But overall, this so Sherlock saw how he himself has lived through a very painful time, and he lost himself, and I think Sherlock applying a bit of his own wisdom on how to recover from such painful times, and of course Hawes, as expected, reacts like, no, I can handle it, I can take this, and that's part of the whole recovery process, is like acknowledging can't do it yourself. So, but at this stage, it's Hawes still claiming he can match.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting what Holmes, using the classic line, he calls Irene the woman.
The woman. Yeah.
And what's fascinating, and I wonder if this makes me think she's going to pop up by the finale. Is he's like, every time he's ever brought up in front of Watson's had to correct him, says, "You mean Moriarty?" And because to him, Irene is dead. Never that's Irene was a separate person, and she is passed on, which is very fascinating. Because he is, I don't think, and I don't know if I've ever discussed this before on the show, but Holmes is not in love with Maury.
No, she's not. He's not. He's in love with Irene,
who's dead.
Yep.
But of course, Irene is Maury. But it's a very complex. I think that's how.
Yeah, I guess he had to make peace with how he lived through that himself, and he always acknowledged that he did love Irene, and Moriarty is somebody who, what they call me, you look evil, right? That whole funny line from season 2. So, yeah, that's a interesting, something that they developed over the 4 seasons, is how Sherlock is coping with the dichotomy of these two personas in one woman. And it brought forth in this small conversation with Hawes, and there's still much to ponder. So this is a gift again of the long trust that the elementary creative team has put in us who follow the show.
And he uses his own pain from that to compare himself to Hawes, and Hawes, obviously, he just is what's seen, and again, Holmes says, no, I'm not saying you are, and he says, I don't think you are one. And it's very powerful, because it shows that Sherlock, he's very selective of who he keeps. It's obvious he thinks of Hawes, one, because he's competent, two, because he thinks of him as a friend, maybe even a colleague. And for Sherlock to think of you like that means a lot.
Which leads me to the larger theme of this episode is, Sherlock has grown so much since season 1. He's gotten, he claimed at the beginning, and men claimed at the beginning, he has no friends. And by season 4, it's obvious he has friends, and he is dealing on how to, he keeps losing friends over this whole season. And it's a well invested illusion in how his character is turning out to be. So I don't know. Do you think Sherlock has friends at this point, 4 years after we've been introduced to him?
He has his version. I mean, he doesn't have friends as you or I would say friends.
Yes. That's the thing. That's an interesting thing that a seed that they planted, and it's still a point of discussion, an interesting point of discussion for us to do, years later. So, and our hats off to the writers of the show.
It was interesting because, of course, original Holmes, he had people, I don't know if original Holmes really had any friends either besides Watson, but back then it was completely normal for a man of leisure just to spend time by himself. People didn't question it like they used to. So, the investigation, Holmes is trying to figure out what there was, and this is another thing that's from the original story. If there was another heir, there's someone else have motive to kill the remaining Baskervilles, because a will actually stated that a illegitimate heir could receive a cut of the
And we got a wall of crazy in this episode, so we did a whole family of the Baskervilles in Joan's basement office. So,
and it would take, the thing is, there's no way to try, because that's hundreds of years, and like Holmes said, it would take months, but Holmes said Henry needs to kill his cousin.
So that to me is a little gap in the episode as well. How do you make it appear to everyone that Roger Stapleton has killed his cousin, right? So,
well, if you have to, if you're friends with releases the media outlets.
But in the world of social media and where people can verify their own information, it's a nod to the original story where they make somebody appear so somebody would come.
It could be a reference. There was a part in the comics where Henry was killed, but it turns out it wasn't. It seems for the most, because even we even have Dr. Mortimer here is the one who's handling, but I think, and Laura Lyons is the one who tries to say because that's how, in the original story it was a long lost Baskerville from another country that they thought didn't have any children that led to. the Lost Year. Now, but it seems like they took aspects of the story, but mostly just kept the names.
And in the original story, was there a real killer dog?
Oh, yes.
Oh.
I think, in the original canon, it was just a really big hunting dog that was just covered some kind of phosphorus material.
And it was trained to be a weapon?
Well, yeah, because it was a hunting dog, so it was just, it was pretty... I'm not sure if I forget if the original story say the exact breed.
Yeah.
But most people assume it's because you breed hunting dog pretty big even back then.
Okay, so in the actual story, the dog really did, hurt and kill somebody, and it devolves into some kind of inheritance story.
Well, there was also a second story of kind of loving original. Oh yeah, it was good. I would advise everyone to read it. It's one of my favorite home stories. There's a few home stories I really want to see the adaptation of because it was so silly and the Jeremy Brett version, the Red-Headed League. God, I want to see the Red-Headed League.
Okay, I will. What can you say that again?
The Red-Headed League. It's one of my favorite home stories.
Another assignment from Zach or Karen.
Oh yes, it's one of the more ridiculous. It's almost silly, but it's so good. Because the case is just, this actual Holmes and Watson just burst out laughing. But, so, we get Holmes doing Bikram Yoga, which I believe is the right term, with, Clyde, who we haven't seen. I think this is out of hibernation.
Oh my God, because, Sherlock has created a warm, hot room to do the yoga in, so Clyde comes out, yes. And we even see Sherlock's shins. Hey. Never seen him in shorts before.
I'm sure the ladies love it.
Okay, yep. I will take it. Thank you very much.
So they actually get a bite from the case, and it turns out one of the employees is a Baskerville. She tries this, and she set up Stapleton to make it. That's why she intentionally used the patents. She intentionally used the Gus. But of course, I couldn't tell who laughed. I think it was Stapleton, but I'm not sure. How she's like, yeah, he told me. That's probably, and you just hear the laugh, and she's like, what was that? I think, I have guessed. Was it Sherlock? I was not. I could not tell. It's because it was very short, hot, so it was really hard. It was, and so from there we get the obviously wrapped up because it turns out they get a warrant based on her false testimony, and they're going to probably convict. Now, what's interesting thing, and I made a note of this: he saves Stapleton, saves Baskerville. These are not good people. No,
they're not.
His brother was involved with even the one that died was a pet. The brother was always obviously complacent in it when he tried to defend it, and Stapleton is a womanizer and looks like a jerk. So I mean, I'm not sure if this happened, if I can think of one reason, but it's just because it doesn't matter because it's breaking the law. He's the people he saved. Yeah. And that's probably the difference. In the original story, I think the Baskerville we meet was essentially a good man. Yeah, that's not the case.
Well, I think Sherlock's going to charge him on a leg for this detecting assignment that he got. Remember when very early in season 1 when Sherlock was called in by this Wall Street firm and said, I'll charge you my usual fee, and Watson asked, what is your usual fee? Remind me to invent one. Remind me to think of one. Yep. And because he hates this kind of, super duper 1%ers, I think Sherlock is going to charge Henry Bell, enough.
Yeah, he doesn't mind money. He hates decadent. He doesn't mind people's money, but he hates people who are just... So, case is wrapped up, and so we end with, in my opinion, the main focus of the episode, Hawes, and he admits that he has a problem he's going to take. He doesn't know if he's coming back, and I love when he gives Sherlock, here's the names of the 3 people who could put up with you.
Yes, that is a wonderful reference to how Sherlock can be difficult to work with. Yes, that was well done. And he says goodbye, and it's also very poignant and a well-earned emotion in this scene. And I hope he comes back. It was left very vague whether he...
I wonder what the point of it. I mean, I wonder who they're gonna because there's not many episodes of the season left. I wonder if who they're gonna bring in is relevant to the season. There's so many things that they've put up in the air, and I'm worried that stuff because I don't think they've greenlit the next season yet.
No, it was just announced like a few hours ago that season 5 is on it. It's been renewed for season 5.
Oh, good. Yes. Good. Oh, thank God. So, if it's not this season, this show, I was worried it's just by the skin, because it's one of those things that's got it's not like a wide demographic, it's one of those select audience shows, but that's a good thing. You're getting people with this show.
Exactly, yes. Yeah, it's
Okay, so, but I was just going to say that, so Hawes, I cannot wait to see what they're going for this
yeah.
episode. But really, that was the main I didn't really have a lot of notes on the case. It was a very, very straightforward
It
case.
was. I mean, there were some interesting points of view that were brought in, like the guy the one who had the army contract to develop the dogs, and the army wants him to talk, and he says very, very, offhand and in a very throwaway manner how they've had other experiments and non-viable and did not, which means they still continue to do these, uh, strange experiments on poor creatures. And then, there's a larger conversation, but the case itself, it's a very simple framework, and we do get to the end, and the soul of this episode is really with the Hawes and Sherlock's relationship.
Well,
So
without a doubt. I think it was still a Sherlock. It wasn't a Sherlock case for deduction, but it was a Sherlock case with like trapping the bad guy. Because that's very Sherlockian
yeah,
thing about tricking the criminal. But yeah, my notes were like non-existent. This is probably one of the shorter ones we've done. But
agree.
yeah, Bruce Hawes was the main focus.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite? I had a couple lines I liked, but I didn't really have any lines that jumped out at me. What about you?
No, no. I mean, it was more a lot of lines like last time we discussed on how the delivery that happens. So, when Watson is again incredulous at Sherlock's behavior, the 2 points where he says, where are you going? I mentioned earlier in our discussion, when Sherlock leaves to play chess, and she has to talk to the homeless guy, and then when she reports on the homeless guy's story about a glowing dog, Sherlock, responds, and Watson again asks, "Why are you taking this seriously?" And that made me laugh. That kind of delivery, but in and of itself, it's not that memorable for good lines, I guess.
Yeah.
But
Oh, God, sorry.
yeah, but before, maybe after you, this would be a good opportunity because there's not much of a discussion on the case to do a short. I want to get your thoughts on overall in the 4 years of Elementary, how this show has pulled things from the Conan Doyle canon and reinterpreted them for this show in a modern setting. Because there's comparison, of course, to BBC Sherlock, how they do direct stories and put it in a modern setting. And this one knows how to pick and choose, whether wisely or unwisely, what to reference. And there's small references, and things get mentioned, and I guess fans like you who are familiar would, be amused or acknowledge that it's a clever way to bring in original stories. And for somebody like me who's never read any of the stories, I from what little Conan Doyle references I know, I get amused, and it must be even more to you who know the story very well.
Well, we get references here and there. I think a lot of things that they have adapted, they've done well. I got to make sure I do this before the next season. I have got to sit down and reread all the stories, because I know there's probably references even I've missed. But for most part, they've done a good job. And like I said, I definitely prefer it to the BBC Sherlock. So I'm definitely, yeah, I like it. Now, as for my final thoughts on the episode, again, the case was pretty straightforward. It wasn't exciting, but I liked how they the aspects of it I liked, and it was a decent adaptation. But to me, the star of this week's episode was the storyline was Hawes. I mean, was it a bad episode? Of course not. It was good, but the focus of it, the case is not the reason probably not the main reason I'd rewatch this. I mean, it just how. I don't want to say it was bad, because I don't mean that. But again, you said I'm a Sherlock, us Sherlock fans, we expect so much, but I'm open-minded enough to expect, if I'm not wowed by it, that doesn't make it a bad episode.
Yeah. The baseline for good episodes here is quite strong. There's rarely a truly
I think
terrible
in the whole
episode.
4 years, I think there's been 2 that I might be like, oh, I didn't like that,
Yes.
and that's 2 overall.
Yes, agreed. I probably want 2 to 3, or like, oh, I don't care for that episode to ever see it again. But yeah, this was a very straightforward episode. Again, we're waiting for that back half.
Yeah,
of
I
the
think
more
that's the other thing. We're just waiting. We cannot wait to see, because they're really building to something. And I just get this feeling, because she keeps getting brought up, Moriarty is coming back this season.
Yeah, I agree. if not this season, very early
Yeah.
in season 5. Now that they've given the green light for season 5, they're gonna try like heck to schedule her.
I
to
know
do
it's hard because
something.
she's doing
So,
Thrones, but hopefully, well, obviously I don't know how
Yeah.
much she's in Thrones this season, but it's just every ending for the show has always has a very specific meaning to it. You know, either victorious, bittersweet, or something. So I cannot see where they go with this. So, is there anything else you want to add for this episode?
That's it. Again, we're looking forward to the next series of episodes where Harvey Morland will tell us something on what is going on, and I look forward to chatting with you when that happens, Zach.
So we will. It's time for us to part. For the game is afoot.